How do you feel about coaching against your alma mater here tomorrow?
I don't feel any different, to be honest. I think when the game was first announced, obviously I didn't love it, but I've approached the last 2 days no different than I've approached any other game. I do know a lot of people within the program. Frank's been an integral part of my career path and my journey here, but tomorrow's game won't be any different. We need to try to find a way to play better and win a game. So we got enough challenges in that and of itself, so I'm really focused on trying to make sure our guys are as prepared as possible.
When you think about your time playing at South Carolina, what are some of the first memories that come into your mind?
I was fortunate. I played for 2 really good coaches. I was recruited by Eddie Fogler and played for him for a year. He retired after my freshman year, probably because of me. And then I played for Dave Odom for 3 and had a really great experience. Played with some really good teammates. Went to one NCAA tournament. And those are the things I remember: the team success, the friends I made, and the opportunity to compete at the highest level of college basketball.
What kind of things did you learn from Coach Martin in the year you guys spent together?
It's interesting. Frank's got this. There's a perception about Frank being just a mean, big, bully guy, and in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people who know him personally, he's the total opposite. He's really like a normal guy that you'd want to hang out with. Now, I don't know how many guys would want to play for him because he's pretty demanding, and he makes sure that his guys are held accountable at all times. I mean, every day, and no one can take for granted because they played well yesterday in the game that tomorrow in practice they'll be able to coast. And so one of the things I learned is the balance of being really challenging with your guys in between the lines, and then loving them like your own kids the moment practice is over or game is over, and making sure that they understand the difference and why you're doing both.
When you say when it first got announced you didn't love it, some guys, they think that's pretty cool. What didn't you like about it?
Well, there's 13 teams in that league, right? I mean, we could have played anybody. We played Arkansas for 2 years, so it's maybe 12 others that we could have been okay with playing. But because you got relationships, no one loves playing against people that they know well. The other thing is, as I started to think about it more, I think this is the 6th year of this event, 5th or 6th. And South Carolina, I know, has been in it twice. And they weren't in it for the last 2 years. And they've only played Oklahoma State in this event. So for them, it's like the Oklahoma State Invitational for them. Instead of the SEC Big 12 Challenge. They haven't played anybody else. I mean, they need to go play somebody else and let us play somebody else.
Does it make it easier that you're playing here and not going back to South Carolina?
Probably in terms of maybe some of the outside noise stuff, maybe. The game is the game. Doesn't make Chris Silver any less physical. That's for sure. It doesn't make Hassani Gravett, who played in the Final Four, any less dangerous for us. And so we just got to prepare. It helps that, we get to play at home. For us, it's always better to play at home than on the road. But other than that, I don't think in terms of the game itself, it's that much of a difference.
What were your responsibilities in that role? Because it wasn't an on-staff role, so what exactly was
No,
it that
man.
you were doing?
I did a little bit of everything. I actually worked for the entire athletic department. I was the director of student athlete development, and I did a little bit of everything. Did some planning for graduation ceremonies. I did some planning for guys on job interviews. I set up some networking seminars. Did some etiquette dinner training. A little bit of everything, and mostly just kind of a liaison and a sounding board for student athletes either transitioning into the university or finishing up their eligibility and going on to the next phase of their lives.
Now that you're a head coach, how has that time helped you?
Yeah, it's all helped. Look back on it, those are things that I deal with all the time. Whether it's guys graduating or coming into our program, helping them understand what are the important things, the important steps you must take to best prepare yourself for the next phase. Whether it's Isaac Likely, here's what it looks like for the first 6 months of your career on campus, or Mitch Solomon, here's what it looks like for the next 6 months as you leave here. Those experiences in that year were really, really beneficial.
For Frank to fight to get you that spot, how thankful are you that you're here now?
Not sure I've thanked him enough. Not sure I could. It was a tough time. Personally, I haven't been fired from a place where I spent a lot of time. And I didn't know Frank that well. Knew him, but I didn't know him that well. And for him to give me an opportunity just to keep my career afloat for the time being, and give me an opportunity to have the access to his program, because it was his program when he came in. And I'll be honest, he inherited a program that wasn't looking up. I mean, he came in a tough situation, and for him to even consider keeping somebody who was part responsible for what he inherited shows what type of person he is.
Lindy, I think it was, said that he sees some similarities defensively between South Carolina and this team. Do you agree with that?
No question. They're a little bit bigger. They've got a lot of depth of size. Their backcourt is a little young, other than Hassani, but the way they play is something that we see a lot. It's not something we've seen much lately because we've kind of changed the way we play defensively, but it's a style of play our guys are familiar with defensively because it's the way we've been playing for the last couple of years.
Of course, this game is also the Remember the 10 game. With especially the younger guys, how important is it to instill the meaning of that to them?
It's huge. It's a part of the legacy of Oklahoma State, the athletic department in general, but certainly the basketball program. It was a really, really unfortunate day in 2001 where those 10 people lost their lives, and we made a pledge that we'll always honor them and keep their memories alive here in this building, and we'll look forward to doing that again with their families in attendance tomorrow.
Go
ahead.
What does that education process look like from your point of view, especially having so many new guys with them?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just a matter of just telling them about it, making sure that they're aware of when we talk about appreciation, that's part of it. And we talk about having a responsibility greater than just how you play personally. You're representing those folks too, and their families, and what it meant to them to be a part of this program. So just talking about it, kind of like we talked about with Dr. King, is making them aware, first of all, of what it is, and then how they play a part in making sure that people know that we still care.
What have you learned differently from that day back in 2001 when you first came here to now? What do you know differently, or what do you know better from those events?
Say it one more time.
From those events that happened in 2001, what do you know better about Remember the 10? Like, what do you know better yourself? Like, what can you share?
Well, I
with
know
the
the
team?
families, so that's a totally different deal. It's one thing to hear about something or read about it, and then it's a totally different ball game to shake Nate Fleming's dad's hand and talk to him face to face, and to know that they still care very much about this program and want this program to continue to have success. And so that totally changes your perspective on what it meant for that to happen, because you see the faces of the people and knowing that they still care for this university, partly because of how their family's been received here in the last 18 years now. I mean, gosh, is what changes the most when you learn about it.
What was the education process for you like when you came here?
Yeah, it was literally my first day on campus. As an assistant coach, at least for me, recruiting is always 1A on my mind, and so just trying to get to know the place and what are the things that stand out when you take people around and talk about the program. And you see that memorial over there in the lobby, and you kind of stop and you read and you learn who the people are and what the story really is behind the scenes. So that's how it was for me. And then you go and you search the names, and Kyle Keller, as I mentioned him, who was the uncle of Nate, who got off the plane, and now who was the guy who actually got the job that I was going for that year. Stephen F. Austin is also a good friend and somebody who I also have leaned on to continue to educate me on it.
What then, as you got here and then your time here has continued, you seem to have really bought into the culture and bought into the program and kind of immersed yourself in it. How has that process been like for you, and what about this program let you do that?
Well, the people here allowed that to happen, because just as they were welcoming, they could have just said, "No, you're not one of us, and you don't belong." And I'm sure there were some people who may have felt that way even once I became the head coach. But for the most part, I've been really embraced. My family has, and people have always meant more to me than anything. And so that's why getting to know those folks, knowing the families, the parents of these people, I'll speak to them tomorrow morning at the breakfast that they have, and I'll make sure that they always know that they can count on me if I can ever do anything for them.
Duncan said the first time that he'd heard of the incident was on his visit here to see the memorial and stuff. Is that kind of a staple of what your visits look like? Is that
I mean, we do a tour, and again, we're pretty transparent about everything because certainly it's not something we want people to think we're hiding from, and we don't want parents thinking that something happened that we're trying to keep them away from. So it's not like something we brag about, but it's something we tell them, hey, this is a real thing. This happened. It was really unfortunate, but we still honor and respect those families. They're still very much all a part of this. You know, we do the run ourselves. Our program does it. I make sure I'm involved. My family is, and we make sure that all of our kids who come in here, at whatever point, they know exactly everything they can about what the program's been and what we want it to become.
You talked about interacting with the families. When did you first meet them? Was that at a Remember the 10 game?
Yeah, so the spring that I got the job, I think I was actually on a recruiting trip to go see Kendall Smith. And I actually found out that I was supposed to be here the next morning. And so I actually flew to Oakland and back in the same day. And I wasn't flying on a private plane. No one was offering me plane time at that time. So I got back really late, and I got up here the next morning. I was a little tired, but when I got here and all those families were here, just to say thanks for me being there, it woke me up. It changed my perspective. I was no longer tired. I actually beat half my team in the race that day, and it was pretty cool experience.
Basketball is not really a long distance running sport, kind of more short bursts. How does the team take to that run?
They don't love it. They didn't love it that day. This past year was probably a little more challenging. It was raining. It wasn't the best of weather. But they know it. Sometimes you do things that you don't necessarily feel great about because you're doing it for the right reasons. And that's what this is about.
Do you remember that news that day in 01 when you were probably at South Carolina?
You know what? Vaguely, very vaguely. So obviously this time I was in the middle of my season, so you hear about it, but you don't know, you know. And obviously I don't have any connections to anybody in this area, and so it's not something we talked about a ton. But as you get into the business and you meet people and you start to figure out who's connected somehow, you know, Brad Underwood and Kyle Keller are like best friends. So that's one of the ways I even got to know Kyle was through Brad and knowing what that story was. And then obviously they were all in the Big 12 at one point. And Kyle was at Kansas, and they were at K-State. And so there was a lot of intertwining in this deal, but I didn't learn about the incident in any depth until years later.
Regardless of who you're playing, is it nice to kind of get out of conference for a weekend?
I don't know. I mean, we just need to play well. I mean, I don't care when we play. Stillwater Junior High tomorrow, man.
What's the kind of walk us through the situation with Tanner Taylor?
Situation as it relates to
Him being on the roster?
yeah, I mean, so Tanner's been around our program for 2 years now. Came here from Emporia, Kansas as a walk-on football player, and I don't know the specifics about what happened there, but I know he showed up here wanting to do this and be a part of basketball. He played both sports in high school. He's a good athlete. You know, he's a body. He can help us in practice right now. And there'll probably be a couple more that we had here before too long. We're still he was easier because he had been with us and we knew more about him to move through all the paperwork and all that stuff. With the others, we're still trying to finalize it. So I don't want to get too far ahead, but we'll almost certainly add 2 or 3 more guys.
How does a guy like yourself with no kind of organic connection to Stillwater, Oklahoma, or Oklahoma State come here for a job and then become so passionate about the culture, and not just the job, but the culture and the school and the people?
Well, I think it's what you said. Organically, I've just been myself. I mean, I think that's all I ever tried to be. And, you know, you guys remember, I never tried to convince anybody that they should be jumping up and celebrating my hire. You know, I had plenty to prove. And there were people who believed I could do the job, and there were people who thought that, you know, Mike Holder was out of his mind. And I got both of it, you know. But what I've tried to do is just work. You know, no matter what, just show up and do your best. Be true to yourself. Try to treat people the right way. And I think over time, if you have the right people around, talent-wise, staff-wise, administratively, the work ethic, the way you treat people, that it works out over time.
Duncan mentioned the "just us" phrase you kind of introduced to them. How did that come about?
You know, it's hard. Going through a college basketball season people say a grind, but it's a long season. I mean, football's got a long season. They play once a week, though, you know, and they can get away and they get into a good routine. You know, basketball, and it's almost year-round for us now. And what happens is this time of year, you start to see teams kind of separate from each other because some teams just tap out. It's been too long. They're mentally fragile. They can't fight to continue to compete and work as hard as it takes to have success. And so I wanted them to just kind of galvanize with each other because where that starts to come from is from the outside. You know, your team's not having success. You're not playing as much as you should. You're not getting the shots. Coach isn't running plays for you. And people, I told my team this, my dad, who's my best friend in the whole world, can't talk to me about strategy in a basketball game. Can't. He's not allowed to. He's not here every day. He doesn't know these kids, and I love him, but as soon as he starts talking about, well, why didn't, we'll talk tomorrow. Because we're not going to have that type of conversation. I'm going to do that with my staff who's here every day, who knows these kids, and it's going to be just us for the rest of the year. And when it goes good, I hope he claps. When it goes bad, I hope he tries to pick us up. But that's what I try to get them to understand. And as young guys especially, it's hard. They've always had success. They've never had these type of struggles. They've never had these type of outside distractions. And so it makes it even more important that that message is continually repeated from me and the staff.
From watching film from Wednesday, is there anything that jumped out that you maybe didn't realize in the moment of the game?
You know what? The game was, again, it was a 9-point final score. It's a one-possession game. You know, and in my mind, where are those possessions? Why are they happening? And what we found is our offense just was stagnant in the second half. And it wasn't that we weren't running the same stuff. We just weren't as sharp running the same things. We didn't drive the ball as aggressively. And we were trying to play one-on-one, which is not our greatest strength. We're better when we move the ball. We get guys cutting. And so we got to try to maintain that focus for a longer period of time.
Do you think much of that was fatigue?
I mean, again, there's no question that guys weren't as fresh in the last 7 minutes of the game. There's no denying that. But at the same time, that's what it is. It's who we have. It's who's going to play. They know that. So what do we have to do? We got to try to prepare ourselves mentally and physically to, if you're playing, you may play 40 minutes every game for the rest of the year. We still got to try to win. And I may have to be a little bit more liberal with using my timeouts. That's something I've looked at internally. I've usually tried to save them. All these games are close. I mean, the last 4 minutes, you got a ball game on your hands, and you want to be able to help your team as much as possible. You know, to set up a shot, to set your defense up. But considering the circumstance, I may need to use them a little bit more early on. Maybe I use 2 timeouts in the first half. Maybe I use one earlier in the second half. It's something I thought about.